My beloved brothers and sisters, we live in a time where the mind never rests. We overthink the past, we worry about the future, and we forget the present. Some of us lie awake at night replaying conversations that are already over, imagining problems that have not yet arrived, and fearing outcomes that may never happen. And the question is, why? Because the heart is trying to carry a burden it was never designed to carry. Overthinking begins when we believe everything depends on us. But peace begins the moment we realize everything depends on Allah. My brothers and sisters, let me tell you something powerful. If Allah is in control, then why are you losing sleep? This does not mean you stop trying. This does not mean you sit back and do nothing. No. Tawakkul is not laziness. Tawakkul is doing your best and trusting Allah with the rest. You plan, you work, you strive, you make dua, and then you hand the outcome over to the one who controls the outcome. So many people say, I trust Allah, but their hearts are still panicking. True tawakkul is when your heart is calm even while the storm is around you. Remember this, if it was meant for you, it would never miss you. And if it was not written for you, no amount of overthinking could bring it to you. Sometimes Allah delays something, not to punish you, but to protect you. Sometimes He says, wait, because the timing matters more than the thing itself. And sometimes He says no, because what you asked for would have broken you, and He loves you too much for that. My beloved brothers and sisters, overthinking drains your energy, weakens your faith, and steals your joy. Tawakkul does the opposite. It strengthens your heart, lifts your soul, and brings peace you cannot explain. When you say, Hasbi Allahu la ilaha illahu, Allah is sufficient for me, say it with conviction, mean it, believe it. Tie your camel, yes, but never forget who owns the camel. Leave what you cannot control to the one who controls everything. Sleep knowing Allah is awake. Smile knowing Allah has a plan. And move forward knowing that whatever happens, it will be good for the believer. When tawakkul begins, my brothers and sisters, thinking ends. May Allah grant us hearts that trust Him completely, minds that find peace in His decree, and lives filled with contentment. Ameen. Overthinking is one of the quiet struggles of our time. It does not arrive loudly, nor does it announce itself as a problem. It slips into the mind gently, disguised as concern, responsibility, or intelligence. At first, it feels like you are simply being careful, thoughtful, or prepared. But slowly, it begins to drain you. The same thoughts repeat themselves, the same worries return, and the heart feels heavy without fully understanding why. Overthinking is not just thinking too much, it is thinking without peace. When the mind runs endlessly, it is often because the heart is disconnected from trust. The human being was never created to control everything, predict everything, or carry the weight of every possible outcome. Yet overthinking convinces us that if we analyze enough, worry enough, or replay things enough times, we can somehow protect ourselves from pain or failure. In reality, the opposite happens. The mind becomes exhausted, the heart becomes restless, and the soul feels distant from tranquility. Many people overthink theft, past. They replay mistakes, conversations, decisions, and moments they wish they could change. They ask themselves, what if I had said this? What if I had done that? But the past is something Allah has already sealed. No amount of thinking can rewrite it. When the heart forgets this reality, the mind keeps knocking on a door that will never open. This is where regret turns unhealthy and wrestful. Cheat turns into self-punishment. Others overthink the future. They imagine worst-case scenarios, fear loss before it happens, and worry about things that are still unseen. They forget that the future is not only unknown to them, but it is fully known to Allah. Overthinking the future often comes from the illusion that we are in charge of what is yet to come. When that illusion breaks, anxiety too has its place. The mind by itself seeks certainty. But life was not created to give us full certainty. If we knew everything that would happen tomorrow, faith would lose its meaning. Trust would have no value. That is why Allah gave the heart a role that the mind cannot fulfill. The heart was created to rely, to surrender, and to feel content even when answers are missing. Overthinking happens. When the mind takes over a position, it was never meant to occupy alone. The mind is a tool, not a master. It is meant to plan, reflect, and learn, but it is not meant to carry the burden of destiny. When the heart is disconnected from tawakkul, the mind tries to compensate, and that is when exhaustion begins. There is also a spiritual dimension to overthinking that many people overlook. When the remembrance of Allah is weak, thoughts become loud. When dua is neglected, worry fills the empty space. The heart needs connection, just as the body needs nourishment. Without that connection, the mind searches for stability in endless analysis, but it never finds rest there. Overthinking can also be a sign of fearing outcomes more than trusting Allah's wisdom. Deep down, the person may believe that if things do not go a certain way, everything will fall apart. This belief places success, happiness, and peace in the hands of circumstances rather than in the decree of Allah. And when circumstances feel unstable, the heart trembles. The irony is that overthinking often makes things worse. It clouds judgment, weakens focus, and steals motivation. Decisions become harder, not easier. Joy comes delayed, always waiting for a future moment when everything is sorted. But that moment rarely comes, because life will always have uncertainty. Allah did not promise us a life without worry, but He promised us a heart that can find peace through reliance on Him. When the heart remembers that Allah is Al-Alim, the all-knowing, it stops trying to know everything. When it remembers that Allah is Al-Hakim, the all-wise, it stops questioning every outcome. And when it remembers that Allah is Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, it stops fearing that what is coming will destroy it. Overthinking is not a lack of intelligence, it is often a lack of surrender. And surrender does not mean giving up. It means accepting that your role is effort, not control. Your role is to strive, not to guarantee results. Once this understanding settles in the heart, the mind slowly learns to rest. When tawakkul is absent, the mind becomes a battlefield. When tawakkul is present, the mind becomes a place of clarity. Overthinking ends not because problems disappear, but because the heart finally knows who is carrying the weight of them. Tawakkul is one of the most misunderstood concepts in faith. Many people speak about it, but few truly live it. Some think tawakkul means doing nothing and waiting for things to magically fall into place. Others believe it is simply a phrase on the tongue, something said when things go wrong. In reality, tawakkul is a deep state of the heart, one that balances effort with trust and action with surrender. True tawakkul begins with understanding who Allah is. Whoa. A person recognizes that Allah is the creator, the sustainer, and the one in absolute control of every affair. Reliance on Him becomes natural. Tawakkul is not built on blind hope. It is built on certainty in Allah's power, knowledge, and mercy. Without this understanding, trust remains weak and easily shaken by circumstances. Taking action is an essential part of tawakkul. Islam never taught you to abandon effort. The believer plans, works, seeks solutions, and uses the means Allah has placed in this world. But the heart does not cling to the means. It understands that means alone do not produce results unless Allah allows them to. This is where many people struggle. They either rely fully on their own effort and forget Allah, or they claim reliance on Allah while neglecting responsible. True tawakkul stands firmly in the middle. When a person practices tawakkul correctly, they do not measure their worth by outcomes. Success does not inflate their ego, and failure does not break their spirit. Why? Because they know they are accountable for effort, not results. The outcome belongs to Allah. This understanding frees the heart from constant pressure and self-blame. Tawakkul so requires patience. Trusting Allah does not mean immediate comfort or instant answers. Sometimes Allah tests our reliance by delaying what we want. Other times, He changes the direction entirely. In those moments, tawakkul is proven, not when things are easy, but when things are unclear. It is easy to say, I trust Allah when life is smooth. It is much harder to say it when doors close, plans fail, and expectations are shattered. One of the beauties of tawakkul is that it brings inner stability. When a person relies on Allah, their heart is not constantly shaken by external events. Loss, disappointment, and uncertainty still hurt, but they do not destroy. The believer understands that Allah's wisdom is greater than their understanding. What looks like a setback may be protection. What feels like a loss may be a redirection towards something better. Tawakkul does not remove fear completely, but it keeps fear from controlling the heart. The believer may feel afraid, but they do not let fear dictate their decisions. They move forward because they trust that Allah will not abandon them. This trust creates courage, not recklessness but calm bravery rooted in faith. Dua plays a integral role in tawakkul. When a person raises their hands to Allah, they are acknowledging their dependence. Dua is an act of humility, a confession that I cannot do this alone. But dua must be accompanied by effort. The believer asks Allah for success and then walks toward it, trusting that Allah will guide their steps. Another aspect of tawakkul is contentment with Allah's decree. This does not mean the believer does not feel sadness or disappointment. It means they do not accuse Allah's plan. They do not say, "Why me?" with resentment. Instead they say, "This was written, and Allah knows what I do not." This mindset protects the heart from bitterness and despair. Tawakkul also teaches detachment from people. When reliance is placed on Allah, the believer is not shattered by humor and disappointment. They understand that people are limited, imperfect, and sometimes unreliable. Expecting perfection from creation leads to heartbreak. Expecting everything from the Creator leads to peace. In a world that teaches control, tawakkul teaches surrender. In a world obsessed with guarantees, tawakkul teaches trust. It reminds the believer that they are never alone, even when the path feels lonely. Allah is managing affairs in ways unseen, arranging events with wisdom beyond comprehension. True tawakkul transforms how a person lives. They strive with sincerity, accept outcomes with grace, and move forward without being paralyzed by fear. Their heart learns to rest not because life is predictable, but because Allah is reliable. And when reliance is placed where it truly belongs, the soul finds a peace that no amount of planning could ever provide. One of the greatest sources of stress in a person's life is the confusion between what they can control and what they cannot. When this line becomes blurred, the heart becomes heavy and the mind becomes restless. Many people exhaust themselves trying to manage outcomes, reactions, and events that were never placed under their authority. Understanding this distinction is not just a practical skill, it is a spiritual realization that brings freedom. Allah created human beings with limited power. We were given choice, effort, intention, and action. But we were not given control over results, timing, or the hearts of others. When a person forgets this, they begin to carry responsibilities that belong only to Allah. This is where anxiety grows. The heart feels pressure to guarantee success, prevent loss, and protect itself from every possible disappointment. What is within your control is how you respond, not what happens. You can choose honesty, effort, patience, and sincerity. You can choose to try again after failure. You can choose to speak kindly, to forgive, and to make dua. But you cannot force acceptance, change someone's feelings, or rewrite what Allah has decreed. When people try to control these things, they suffer. Many people struggle because they believe that if they do everything right, the outcome must be right. But life does not work that way. You can make the best decision and still face hardship. You can have pure intentions and still be misunderstood. You can work hard and still experience delay. This does not mean you failed. It means you reached the limit of your control, and beyond that limit begins Allah's wisdom. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means releasing the illusion of control. It means saying, I have done my part, and now I trust Allah to do what is best. This release is not weakness, it is strength. It takes courage to stop fighting reality and start accepting divine decree. One of the hardest things to let go of is people. Many hearts are tied to the approval, behavior, or presence of others. They overthink messages, tone, and silence. They replay interactions, wondering what they could have done differently to be treated better or loved more. But guidance, affection, and loyalty are not things you can force. Hearts belong to Allah. When a person accepts this, they stop blaming themselves for what they could never control. The same applies to provision and success. People worry endlessly about sustenance, careers, and future security. While effort is required, obsession is not. Risk is written. It may come through unexpected doors, at unexpected times, and in unexpected forms. When a person understands this, they work hard without desperation. They strive without panic. They trust that what is written will reach them, even if the path looks uncertain. Letting go also means accepting timing. Humans are impatient by nature. We want answers now, relief now, success now, But Allah's timing is always precise. Delays are not denials. Sometimes Allah is preparing you for what you asked for. Sometimes He is protecting you from receiving it too soon. And sometimes He is redirecting you towards something better. Trusting this timing requires humility and faith. Another area people struggle to release is the past. Regret becomes a form of control when someone believes they could have changed what Allah already decreed. While reflection and repentance are healthy, dwelling endlessly on past mistakes is not. Once you have learned, repented, and corrected your path, the rest must be left with Allah. Holding on to guilt beyond that point only prevents growth. When a person learns to separate effort from outcome, life becomes lighter. They still care, but they are not consumed. They still plan, but they are not attached. They still hope, but they are not crushed by disappointment. This balance allows the heart to remain soft without being fragile. Letting go does not mean becoming careless, it means becoming conscious of your limits, conscious of Allah's power, conscious that peace does not come from controlling life, but from trusting the one who controls life. The believer who understands this distinction walks through life with dignity. They do what they can, leave what they cannot, and sleep with a at ease. Not because everything worked out the way they wanted, but because they know everything is working out the way Allah knows is best. Many people struggle with the idea of Allah's plan, not because they doubt His existence, but because they struggle to understand His wisdom. When life does not unfold the way they hoped, questions arise in the heart. Why was this taken away? Why did this door close? Why did this pain last so long? These questions are deeply human, but if they remain unanswered in the heart, they can slowly weaken trust. Understanding that Allah's plan is perfect does not mean understanding every detail. It means trusting the one who sees what we cannot. Allah's knowledge is complete and unlimited. He sees the past, present, and future at once. He knows the outcome of every choice, the consequences of every path, and the hidden effects of every event. Human beings, on the other hand, see only what is directly in front of them. Yet many times we judge Allah's plan based on this limited vision. We label things as good or bad too quickly, forgetting that what appears harmful now may be essential later. Delays are one of the most difficult tests of faith. Hence, something you desire does not arrive on time, the heart begins to question. But delay does not mean neglect. Allah does not forget His servants. Sometimes He delays because the timing is not right. Sometimes the heart needs growth, patience, or maturity before receiving what it asks for. And sometimes the delay itself is the gift, protecting you from a burden you are not yet ready to carry. Hardships also form a major part of Allah's plan. Pain is not always a sign of punishment. Often, it is a sign of purification, elevation, or redirection. Through hardship, hearts are softened, arrogance is broken, and reliance on Allah is strengthened. Many people look back at their most painful moments and realize that those moments shaped them into who they needed to become. Without that difficulty, they would have remained stuck in comfort but distant from growth. Unanswered prayers are another area where people struggle. A person may make dua sincerely, repeatedly, and with tears, yet the answer does not come in the way they expect. This can be confusing and painful, but Allah answers every dua, just not always in the form we imagine. Sometimes the answer is not now. Sometimes I have something better. And sometimes it is protection from a harm you cannot see. The mistake is assuming that silence means rejection. Loss is perhaps the greatest challenge to trusting Allah's plan. Losing a loved one, an opportunity, or a dream can shake the heart deeply. In those moments it is easy to feel abandoned. But Allah never abandons His servants. Loss reminds us that this world is temporary and that attachment to it must remain limited. What is truly meant for you will not leave you empty-handed, it will leave you closer to Allah, even if the path there is painful. Allah's plan also involves redirection. Sometimes the path you desperately want is not where your goodness lies. Allah closes doors not to punish you, but to guide you. A closed door may feel like reject, but in reality, it may be protection from harm, regret, or long-term pain. Trusting Allah means believing that He chooses for you what you would choose for yourself if you had His knowledge, One of the most comforting truths about Allah's plan is that nothing is random. Every event has purpose, even if that purpose is hidden. Every delay, hardship, and change is part of a greater design. The believer understands this. They stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is Allah teaching me through this?" Faith does not remove pain, but it gives pain meaning. It transforms suffering into patience, loss into reliance, and confusion into humility. The believer does not need to understand the entire plan to trust it. They only need to know the one who made it. When the heart truly believes in Allah's perfect plan, it finds peace even in uncertainty. The believer walks forward with hope, knowing that whatever unfolds is unfolding by divine wisdom. And with that trust, fear softens, resentment fades, and the heart learns to rest in the certainty that Allah never makes a mistake. Peace is something every human being searches for, yet so many look for it in the wrong places. Some believe peace comes when problems disappear. Others think it arrives with success, wealth, or approval. But even those who seem to have everything often feel restless inside. This is because true peace is not the absence of difficulty, it is the presence of faith. When faith is strong, the heart remains calm even when life is uncertain. Peace through faith begins when a person understands that this world was never meant to be perfect. It is a place of tests, changes, and temporary attachments. Expecting constant comfort from a temporary world will always lead to disappointment. But when a believer understands the nature of life, they stop being shocked by hardship. They still feel pain, but they are not confused by it. Faith connects the heart to something greater than circumstances. When the heart knows Allah, it no longer feels alone in struggle. A problem may still exist, but it no longer feels overwhelming. The believer knows that Allah is aware, Allah is watching, and Allah is in control. This awareness brings a deep sense of reassurance that cannot be replaced by material comfort, one of the greatest sour. Source of peace is knowing that Allah is near. Near to your thoughts, your tears, and your silent fears. When a person turns to Allah in remembrance, the noise of the world softens. The heart finds relief not because the problem is solved, but because it is shared with the one who can solve it. Faith also brings peace by reshaping how a person views hardship. Instead of seeing difficulty as meaningful, as suffering, the believer sees it as purposeful. Hardship becomes a means of growth, purification, and closeness to Allah. This perspective does not remove the pain, but it removes despair. The believer understands that every trial carries reward, and every moment of patience is seen by Allah. Another aspect of peace through faith is freedom from constant comparison. Many people lose peace by measuring their lives against others. They compare blessings, achievements, and timelines. Faith reminds the believer that everyone has a different test. What someone else has may be a trial for them, and what you lack may be a mercy for you. When the heart accepts this, jealousy fades and contentment grows. Faith also protects the heart from being shaken by people. Human beings are imperfect. They disappoint, misunderstand, and sometimes hurt one another. When peace depends on people, it is fragile. But when peace depends on Allah, it becomes stable. The believer still values relationships, but their emotional balance does not collapse when people fail them. Trust in Allah brings calm during uncertainty. The believer may not know what will happen next, but they know who is in charge. Trust quiets the heart. It allows the believer to move forward without being paralyzed by fear. They take steps with hope rather than panic, knowing that whatever lies ahead will be handled with divine care. Even during moments of sadness, faith provides comfort. Tears do not contradict faith. Feeling broken does not mean weakness. Faith gives permission to feel while still believing. The believer cries, but they do not lose hope. They feel pain, but they do not lose trust. This balance is a gift that only faith can provide. Peace through faith also comes from acceptance. Acceptance of Allah's decree does not mean liking everything that happens. It means trusting that Allah knows what He is doing. It means choosing contentment over resentment. This acceptance lifts a heavy burden from the heart, allowing it to breathe again. Ultimately, peace is not found at the end of the journey. It is found in who you walk with during the journey. When Allah is at the center of the heart, peace becomes a companion, not a destination. Life may remain unpredictable, but the heart becomes steady. This is the beauty of faith. It does not promise a life without storms, but it promises a heart hats will not sink in them. And that kind of peace is priceless. Strengthening tawakkul is not something that happens overnight. It is a journey that requires conscious effort, self-awareness, and a constant return to Allah. Tawakkul grows the same way faith grows, through small, consistent actions that shape the heart over time. It is not built only in moments of crisis, but in daily habits that train the soul to rely on Allah in all circumstances. One of the most powerful ways to strengthen tawakkul is through sincere dua. Dua is not just asking for things, it is an admission of weakness and need. When a person raises their hands, they are declaring that they cannot manage life alone. This humility softens the heart and strengthens reliance. But dua should not be rushed or mechanical. It should come from a place of presence, honesty, and trust that Allah hears every word, even the ones left unspoken. Patience is another essential step. Tawakkul without patience cannot survive tests. Life will not always move according to your timeline, and Allah will often test your trust by delaying what you desire. Patience teaches the heart to remain steady while waiting. It prevents frustration from turning into resentment. Through patience, the believer learns that waiting is not wasted time when it is spent trusting Allah. Gratitude also plays a major role in strengthening tawakkul. When a person regularly acknowledges Allah's blessings, their heart becomes more secure. They realize that Allah has already taken care of them in countless ways. This reflection builds confidence in Allah's future care. Gratitude shifts focus away from what is missing and toward what is already present, reducing fear and anxiety about what lies ahead. Taking positive action is equally important. Tawakkul is not passive. A believer who truly relies on Allah still strives for improvement, seeks solutions, and puts in effort. Action is a form of worship when done with the right intention. When you work while trusting Allah, you remove desperation from effort. You strive with hope instead of fear, knowing that your responsibility ends with effort. Letting go of excessive control is another practical step. Many hearts are attached to specific outcomes, and this attachment weakens tawakkul. Learning to say, I will do my best, and I accept whatever Allah chooses, frees the heart from constant tension. This does not happen instantly. It requires repeated reminders and conscious surrender, especially when things do not go as planned. Strengthening tawakkul also involves nurturing the connection with the Qur'an. The Qur'an constantly reminds the believer of Allah's power, mercy, and wisdom. It shares stories of people who trusted Allah in the most difficult circumstances and were never abandoned. Regular engagement with the Qur'an reshapes the heart's perspective and reinforces trust during times of doubt. Surrounding oneself. Reminders of faith also helps. Being around people who speak with trust, patience, and hope strengthens tawakkul. Words have weight, and constant exposure to negativity, fear, and complaint weakens reliance on Allah. Choosing environments that nurture faith makes a noticeable difference in the heart. Another practical step is reflecting on past experiences. Looking back at moments when things worked out in unexpected ways builds confidence in Allah's plan. Remembering how Allah carried you through previous hardships reminds the heart that He will do so again. This reflection transforms memory into a source of strength rather than regret. Acceptance of human limitation is also crucial. Tawakkul grows when a person accepts that they do not have all the answers. This acceptance brings humility and peace. The believer stops fighting uncertainty and starts living with trust. They understand that not knowing is part of faith, not a failure of it. Finally, consistency matters more than intensity. Small acts of Allah consciousness repeated daily have a greater impact than occasional emotional moments. Tawakkul is built through steady remembrance, honest dua, patient effort, and continuous surrender. Over time, these practices shape the heart. Worry decreases, fear softens, and confidence in Allah grows. Life may still be unpredictable, but the heart becomes anchored. And when the heart is anchored in Allah, tawakkul becomes a natural state rather than a forced effort. In conclusion, my beloved brothers and sisters, Life will always come with uncertainty. Questions will arise, plans will change, and outcomes will remain beyond our control. Overthinking will whisper fear into the mind, and worry will try to settle in the heart. But remember this truth: the heart was not created to be anxious, it was created to trust. When tawakkul enters the heart, clarity replaces confusion. You begin to understand that your duty is effort, not perfection. Your responsibility is sincerity, not control. What is meant for you will reach you at the right time, and what passes you by was never meant to stay. This realization lifts a burden that no amount of thinking could ever remove. Trusting Allah does not mean life becomes sigh, but it means the heart becomes strong. You learn to walk through trials without losing yourself. You learn to face loss without losing hope. You learn to wait without despair and strive without fear. Tawakkul teaches you that even when things do not make sense, they are still in the hands of the most wise. So when your mind feels heavy, return to Allah. When your heart feels restless, remind it who is in control. Leave the unseen to the one who sees all, and let your soul rest in His decree. Because the moment tawakkul truly begins, overthinking no longer has power over you. May Allah grant us hearts that rely on Him completely, minds that find peace in His remembrance, and lives filled with contentment and trust. Ameen.